Ready to elevate your credit understanding and score? With insider tips and a plan, you can take action to improving your score, which can save thousands in unnecessary finance charges. Let's tackle today's topic with your coach, Credit Christie.
Friends, thanks so much for joining me. My name is Christy and I am your credit coach, and I am so excited to share with you today's podcast topic, and that is what hurts my credit score the most. So let's dive right in. Late payments is the number one thing that can hurt your credit score the most. 35% of what makes up your credit score is based off of your payment history. So by all means, with everything in you, please do not be late on your credit obligations. So what shows up on your credit report that's going to report your payments? It's going to be any installment loans. So student loans, auto loans, mortgage, debt consolidation loans, and then also any revolving types of credit. So that includes home equity lines of credit and credit cards. So every type of credit has its own little grace period that's available to you, but please do not take advantage of that. Because if you were even one day late beyond that grace period, it could have devastating results to your credit history and your credit score. Secondly, and maybe even tied, is a derogatory event. So what's a derogatory event that's reported on your credit report? That's going to be a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, a short sale, or a public judgment. So let's say a repossession became a collection and you never did remedy or make payments on that shortfall for that auto repossession. That could turn into a public judgment and be reported in that area that the other derogatory events that I just mentioned might fall into. Then third is an overutilization of credit. So what does that mean? We've got an amount of credit that is loaned to us, and then we've got a balance against it. So this is really significant when it comes to your credit card or your revolving term lines of credit. You've got a limit available and you've got a balance. And if that balance is over 30% of what's available to you from that limit, the credit reporting bureaus view that as an overutilization of credit. The other way in installment loans where an overutilization of credit can be present is, I'll use student loans as an example. And student loans are often in deferment. If you're going through school right now, you're still in college, your student loans are in deferment. And then a lot of times when you're just starting off in your career, you're not in a place where you can repay those. So sometimes you have an income-based repayment, which means you have a tiny little payment going against what's owed. And that means you're not necessarily paying down all of that interest that your student loans are accumulating. So you might start off with a balance and actually owe more than that original loan amount. So that's obviously an overutilization of that loan amount. Number 4 is a new collection. This shows up more times than I'd like to share with you. And it usually happens when somebody moves and you never received that last bill or statement from someplace, or you've moved and a statement was sent to your previous address and they never got that to you. What's unfortunate is it's probably a very small bill, like your final utility payment or the charge for the cable box that you have to bring back to the company. And you just forgot to do that in a move. That's really easy to happen. So I've seen collections start off with this very small amount, owed maybe $100, $150, but it has really large implications and hurts in a very negative way your credit score and your credit history, which really could have been avoided. So especially when you're moving, be aware of who you might still owe for a final payment and just make sure that you make arrangements with them to make that happen. Maybe have like your debit card on file with them for an auto pay so you can finalize your arrangement with them and move on without it turning into a new collection. And then finally, any new inquiries or new credit. This actually makes up 10% of your credit score overall. And so if you don't have to have new credit, please don't go out and get new credit. So what's really important is to have a nice mix of an installment loan and a bank issued credit card. You don't need to have store credit cards. I was in a situation where I was aware of a woman who had 36 credit cards with balances. She had over 50 credit cards to her name, but 36 of them had a balance. And I would say over half of them had a balance of less than somewhere between $800 and $1,000. It was almost like she was just feeding this need of being able to go out and use them and tap into the little rewards or store dollars that they gave them. And maybe it was because she was recently retired and she needed something to do. Maybe she just needed that responsibility of paying that bill each month. So it's just interesting when we really stop and take a moment to reflect on our behaviors. What's creating those behaviors? What's forcing that to show up? So I had to give her my own coaching and teach some new behaviors with the credit cards. So on that note, if you don't have to have a line of credit or a new loan, don't go out and just open up store credit cards for the sake of having a store credit card. The inquiry would actually hurt your scores more than helping, and you don't need to have that. If you have to get a student loan or something like that for school, obviously you can't avoid that. If you're intending on financing a car or financing a home, obviously you have to have that new inquiry, but just really do a good job of protecting your credit. Now, when you do a self-check. So if you go through Credit Karma or Experian or someplace like that, where you're just tapping into your own credit, that doesn't hurt you. It's not a hard inquiry. You're not applying for debt. So that's a soft pull and it won't have an effect on your score. So what helps the credit score the most? Having consistent on-time payments. Obviously, to avoid those late payments, that's 35% of what makes up your credit score. This is what is really important, and I want to drive this point home. Your longevity of your credit, your depth of your history, really has a great impact. It's 30% of what makes up your credit score. So that longevity is really important. If you are desiring to pay down your credit cards to zero, I encourage you to do that. But here's what I want to make sure you know: don't close that credit card. Keep it open. If it doesn't have an annual fee, if it doesn't cost you to keep it, just keep it open. Make sure that credit card is placed in a very safe place. You don't want somebody else to get their hands on it and start using it. But please don't close it, because especially if it was like one of your first credit cards that you've ever had, maybe you obtained it in college or something along those lines, keep that going, because if you close it, that relationship with that creditor ends, and it's no longer reporting all of that longevity. If it's a closed account, it's not helping you. The best way to get a long and rich history on credit is to become an authorized user on somebody's card. So I'll use the example of Grandma. She's had a 10-year history with Discover Card. She's got a $5,000 limit and a very low balance. Maybe she just puts gas and groceries on it. Ask Grandma if you can be an authorized user. You're not using her actual credit. You don't have to swipe a card and add to a balance. You're only tapping into her history, her very great history. You're borrowing it just to report on your credit. You never have to actually use it for it to help you. But the coolest thing about an authorized user account is that if she's got a 10-year credit history, the moment it starts reporting on your credit, it doesn't start from the day it starts reporting. It starts reporting that 10-year history. And that's where the magic is at. Also, keep your revolving accounts under 30% of your limit. That's your credit cards. If you're not there yet, that is your aim, that is your goal, and that is my encouraging words, is to start finding ways to make that happen. And you will see your credit scores soar. If you found this information helpful and you know of somebody else who could benefit from hearing this information, please share this podcast with them and subscribe to my channel. I'm so glad to have this time with you today. And until next time, thank you for listening today and being part of this. Talk to you later, my friends.
Subscribe now and share with a friend to stay in the loop for new credit content and insider tips to maximize your credit knowledge. And follow Credit Christie on Instagram.